Hi, and welcome to this What's New session on subscription billing. My name is Brian Nielsen. I'm a program manager within the Business Central development team, and I'll take you through the new feature for subscription billing, or subscription and recurring billing. We have added a new module for subscription and for subscription handling, for recurring invoicing. It has a set of new concepts that it'll probably take a while to get used to. A slightly different process because it is a different thing. There's a concept of contracts, which you would normally expect when you have a subscription. You have a contract for what it is that you will get recurring invoices for. You have service commitments, which specify the thing that you will be invoiced for. Like it can be tickets, minutes, usage of something, or just a service that is provided to you on a recurring basis. There are some objects behind it with prices and costs, and maybe some other linked service commitments. You can generate billing proposals or schedules. Once you have a contract, once you have it set up, you can get the system to generate either the next invoice or the next set of invoices, or you can do the next invoice for an extended period if you need to. So it's very flexible in what you can do there. You can also do usage-based billing, which means that you will get the quantities and maybe also the prices that you invoice from an external system, import it into these contracts, and then start your recurring billing process. Later on, we will automate these processes so that you just need to set them up and it will run. Once you post an invoice for a recurring or for a subscription, it may be for a service that extends 12 months, like if it's an annual fee for a service that you provide, but you, in your accounting system, you only recognize the revenue for the individual periods. So there is a deferrals system for these contracts that set up the deferrals in advance when you post a new invoice, and then you can decide to release the individual periods deferrals and then post the revenue to GL or expense if it's on the vendor side. You can manage prices, you can do updates to contracts, we will see that in the demo. You can do renewals, you can even automate some of it. And later on in the minor release, I think it's 25.2, we will have a Power BI app, which means we will have embedded reporting for the subscription billing module. And we will also provide some Excel reports so you can get your data out and do a quick analysis, or maybe even create your own reports based on that. There's a lot more to learn because it's a new module. There are some new terms and new ways of doing things. But we will see some of that in the coming demos. So the first demo is a customer that comes in and wants your hardware that is sold with maintenance, 2 different flavors of maintenance. And then we will create the contract and create the billing proposal, and we'll see the first invoice, and then we'll look at the deferrals. So we see how it's done end to end in a very straightforward scenario. And then later on, we can extend the contract with some more services that we can then bill going forward. But let's start with a sales order. We'll create a new one. We'll create it for Tailspin. And just to keep it relatively simple, we do it for June. All good. And then we have to pick an item. And in this case, we have a hardware item here. The hardware, it comes with maintenance. And we have 2 kinds of maintenance that we have set up for this hardware. You can either select the internal ones, whether that's the premium or standard ones, it's debatable. But there's also one that is done by an external vendor. Slightly different prices, but you get to select in the sales process, or the customer gets to select. In this case, where you only have a vendor, there's only a customer side, like selling side, like we are doing the support. So we'll pick that one. And we need a quantity of 1. We have 1,000 in total, but we also sold maintenance, and that's not reflected anywhere. And that is because it's a service commitment that we will bill on a recurring basis. We have maintenance, the price is 1,000. There are some calculation types. In this case, we've chosen the item price. You could also choose the item price including discounts. And in this case, the item price is 1,000. Maintenance is 20% of that, so that's 200. And it's done, you can see here, the billing base period is 12 months, so it's annual. And the billing rhythm is also annual, which makes sense, of course. So an annual fee, you could say, for maintenance service. So we have the order, but we still don't have a contract. We still don't have these recurring invoices. So they need to sort of come into play. And they will come into play when you start releasing the order, either by shipping or releasing, or also when you ship an invoice. And in our case, there are no extra services or anything. We can just go ahead and ship an invoice. But before we do that, let's take a look at the order confirmation that we could send to the customer. There is a separate word layer or designated word layout for subscription billing because it has to have extra information. We'll pick that and do preview. And as you can see, it looks like a normal sales order, and it has a unit price, 1,000, and then it has a service price that is a recurring service. And that is what we will see going forward. So for this one, we can just say post ship an invoice. And we say no. Like the invoice is there for hardware. So now we've invoiced the order. They have gotten an invoice for the hardware, but now we need to, or in the coming months, we need to invoice for the maintenance service. We would normally go into recurring billing. We would set the date. It started in June, so we would expect to see something here. But there's nothing. There's other customers because the service commitment that we have has not been assigned to a contract yet. We have Tailspin Toys here, but it hasn't been assigned to a contract. So you can either pick an existing one if there is one, or if it's a completely new customer, you would probably go in and pick them and say, here's a contract, and okay with that. And then you assign the selected services to the contract, and it will disappear. So now we have a contract for Tailspin Toys. And then we could go into recurring billing, clear this proposal. The first billing template is a filter for which contracts do you want to bill and periods and so forth. But for now, we'll just focus on June. We don't set an end date because we want whatever is next for these customers. So we create a billing proposal, and we can see that Tailspin Toys is in the list with a period from June to end of May next year because it was an annual maintenance contract. So let's focus on that, and we can then create documents. We are on this line. We can create documents, and we can put in dates for these documents, and we can decide to either have them here or we can post them directly. We can do an invoice or a document per contract, per the sell to customer or the bill to customer. So there's flexibility in what you generate out of this. For now, we'll just do it per contract. So let's do that. We'll also create the rest of these contracts that were out there on this date, which is fine. Then we'll go to the sales invoices. And we have Tailspin Toys here. we would expect to see posting date end of June. And there's a description, hardware, it's the maintenance part. It's for the full period. It costs 200, which is 20% of the cost. Before you post, maybe you want to see where does this invoice end up, because it is an annual invoice, and you can do posting preview. And first, you can see there are 2 entries in GL. We'll look at them first. And you can see that we post the receivables, the customer part, they got an invoice, and then we post directly to deferrals, because it's not obvious that you want to recognize any or all of it, or maybe part of it, right away. But we have set up customer contract deferrals, and we have 12. We started at the beginning of a period, so there's no partial periods. And they're here, and they're ready to be released. There is a field, whether they are released or not, whether they have been moved to GL or not. And they split out the 200 for the maintenance, for the annual maintenance in 12 periods. So they will be generated here. And enough posting. Then we'll post the invoice. And we could go to the posted invoice. Then we could say find entries. It would, of course, be the same as we saw in preview. We could look up the deferrals. A better way of looking at deferrals rather than checking some dates is to look at how they are split out in future months. And we are missing a year here, posting date month. I'll pick the year because we didn't start in January. In this year, we will only defer in June and going forward up until May next year. So here we have next year, and you have entries there. But that is the deferral entries. Nothing has been posted to GL yet. So now we have posted the invoice with the annual subscription, and we have the deferral entries. In order to get the deferral entries from the deferral account, where they're posted now, to the revenue account, we need to release the deferrals. And that is done through a batch job. So we go to contract, deferral, release. It's a batch job, and we will do it for, we could do it only for June, and it would be fine. But we could also say, assuming that our accounting periods are open, say that we do it for August. And then we would have June, July, and August released for deferrals. So we put it in, and we have it. And then we could go back to our deferrals entries, customer, contract, deferrals. And if we filter on only this contract that we looked at before, and we say filter to this value before we look at the pivot, we can see that for this contract, for those that are released, we can actually spread it out here. We can see that the ones that are released are in June, July, and August, and the rest is for the remaining period of the invoice, including May next year, has not been released. So we can control what we release or what part of the revenue we recognize in GL based on these contracts. So we have started with an order. We have invoiced the customer for the hardware. We have created a service commitment, the commitment to provide maintenance service. We have taken that commitment and put it into a contract. We have created a billing proposal for the next invoicing period, which happened to be in June. But the invoice that came out of that was for a full year because the maintenance is an annual subscription. After that, when you post the invoice, because it's an annual subscription, deferral entries are created, and you can then release them in a batch job where you control what to release and when. So that's all good. You have a sales process, and you can do recurring billing. Sometimes the customer will come in and want something more, or maybe you're not selling hardware, but just some services. So of course you can start from a contract. It can either be from a completely new contract, or maybe the customer, in this case, Tailspin Toys, they just want an addition to their contract. And you cannot just add lines, but you can extend the contract. Because you cannot just add any random line to a contract. You can only add service commitments, like things that we can do recurring billing for. So in this case, we extend this contract, and in this case, they don't need more ticketed support, but maybe they want premium support. And it costs, they just want one of that. It costs 180. And they wanted to start, let's say, in September. And then we can see what happens here. But now that you've done that, you can extend the contract, and you have a new line added to the contract. It can also be from a completely blank contract for a new customer. It's more often the case that there are modifications to an existing product. If it was the case that there was a standard support included, you can put an end date to any of these services so that you can add more and stop some of the existing items. So now we have a new service commitment on this contract. So now we can go to recurring billing. We could pick end of November as the next billing date. Let's say we skipped September and October for a reason. We want a billing proposal for end of November. So there are some existing lines here, and they are already tied to existing documents. We can see that over here, so we cannot easily delete them. We'll leave them, but we'll create a billing proposal where we expect Tailspin to show up. And they're here. The new service with the support, premium support, starts in September and runs until billing to date, end of November. And then we could say we create documents, and create documents, and we could create it. Let's just create 2 documents because some of them are already existing. Let's go and see. Invoice, Tailspin. And we now have an invoice for premium support for September, October, and November, like 3 times 180. So there are different ways of starting the process, but the end result is, of course, always an invoice with deferral entries. That will also be the case here because it's an extended period. And revenue recognition. So it's very flexible what you can do and what you can set up in this. In this release, you will have to do with the analysis mode and the list, but in the 25.2 minor, we will provide Excel reports so you can get your data out and do analysis, and you'll also see the Power BI Embed app that will be provided, so you will have embedded reporting for subscription billing in Business Central. Sometimes when you do subscription billing or recurring invoicing, the data for the individual invoices are based off of some external data. Usually what the end customer consumes. It could be support tickets, support minutes, articles read, how much electricity that they have consumed, different kinds of consumption. And of course, you need to feed that data into the individual invoices for the recurring billing. And this is what usage-based billing can do for you. Let's look at the product and see how it's done. So when you've done your setup with the data supplier, with the item references, you're ready to import some data. And you can search for it, or you can bookmark it like I did. So we have usage data import here. It's a simple process. You want to do a new import. You need to edit the record, so we point to a supplier of data. Then you import the file that you have. So now we get the file in, You can see here to the right that we have one file in. You can then either step by step go through the process of creating the imported line, process them, create the billing data, and then process the billing data. You can also delete it again if there was a mistake. But this is a good way of going through it when you are doing troubleshooting. If it's just a normal process and you've done it before, you will just go and process data. And everything is okay here. In this case, I have one line. It's for February. I could put a note on that. Tickets February 24, part 1, for example. Then I can go back to recurring billing and create new proposals. It will take the data that it has here for that subscription and create a new invoice. I can also create all the invoices, if I want that, directly by creating customer invoices. There's also a button or action for vendor invoices. Now that I know that there's just one invoice, I can just go and do it here. I know it's for February. And we'll just keep it unposted so we can go and take a look at it. It is created. And then we just take a look at it. It's here. This one. So we got it. 8 tickets. They used up in support, and we're going to charge them in this invoice for February. The period is down here. So it's all very easy once you've set it up to get data in. If you have data and they come from an external system and you haven't set up the contract for the customer, the process is almost the same. You create a new import. And we'll just edit it, pick the supplier, and we'll import a new file. Actually, I know that we will be looking at tickets for January 24, part 3. Then I can import a file. And once it's imported, I can process it. But because I process data without having a contract already, the system will give me an error. And I can just click on that error. It will say there's no subscription ID for the service commitment. It has identified the service commitment, but it doesn't know in what contract to put it. So we'll extend the contract. We don't need the vendor part of it. We need a customer. We actually want a new contract for this one. We want Lucerne. And we're good to go. So now we created a contract that we can put it in. We'll pick that. And the system has picked up that it's still ticketed support. The provision start, that's the beginning date in this file is 1st of January. And like the example before, it has a quantity already in the file. So we'll pick that. In order to extend a new contract, you need to perform extensions first. It's fast, and then you can close it. You can go back, and then you can process data once more. And you're good to go. And we could create a customer invoice. In this case, it was for January. We'll keep it open so we can take a look at it. And from here, you can actually go directly and see the customer contracts. You can also navigate to open invoices, but you can see the invoices here directly. It's for Lucerne, and we would expect to see a quantity of 6 in here. So whether you have the contracts already or you need to do a mapping, it's a straightforward process with little setup needed in terms of getting started and importing usage data. So a brief demonstration of some of the capabilities. There's a lot more, and there's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more variants and variations that can be supported. It's a new module. There are some new terminology. But it supports recurring billing for services. You can start from an order, and so you have a sales order process, or you can start directly with contracts if that's your business. You can also use usage data and import it and then do recurring billing on that. There's a deferral part so that you recognize revenue the way that you want. It will split up the invoices in deferrals, and you can put them or take them into GL in the way that you prefer. There are reports coming in Excel and Power BI, so go and take a test drive of the new module. Thanks for watching this session.